This is No One Left Behind by Cosmic Ace. Chapter 6, Ohana means family. Summary, and family means no one's left behind. Notes. Hello, spectacular people. So, this story has already reached 2,500 hits and over 300 kudos. You guys, I love you all. This was literally my dream as a kid, having my stories read and people actually liking it. So thank you all so much. Also, did you guys see that we found out Hawk's name? It's Keigo Takami, which is very different from what I had planned. The name I had made up was Sora Kaze, Sky Wind, I think. But I like both. I can't wait to ride him. Going back to school is normal, actually. The only difference was that Izuku and Hitoshi now arrived and left together. The teachers were alerted of the change, and no one called them out or bullied them. The two ate beneath the same tree. Not much was different, but at the same time everything felt that way. Hitoshi was happy. He was getting better at letting people help, and he'd never gotten more sleep than he did now. For once, life was looking up for him. Everyone noticed one difference, though. Hitoshi was speaking now. Not to people exactly, but he was talking. Students listened to him muttering things in the halls. Teachers heard him working on math problems out loud, albeit quietly. It unnerved a few of them. He knew that, but he didn't stop. Zu chased away anyone who tried to be mean to him. It was nice having someone that wanted to protect him. Hitoshi was too happy to pay attention to them anyway. Mrs. Ink was filing, whatever that meant, to foster then adopt him. It meant that they were going to get his things today. His pictures of Mama and Papa and Eraserhead were hopefully still hidden in his pillowcase. The other things, the more important things he had, were hidden in a backpack under a loose board in the closet. No one could find it there. They left school and headed straight home today. Izuku was going to stay home with Mr. Shi, so it was just Hitoshi and Mrs. Ink going. Hitoshi clung to her hand when they got out of the car. The house hadn't changed, not physically at least. It felt colder now. He had been at the Midoriya's house. He knew what a normal family was supposed to be like now. It took him seeing true kindness to realize just how bad his previous foster parents had been, and just how warm his new family was. He hid behind Mrs. Ink's legs when she knocked on the door. It was flung open a second later, making Hitoshi flinch. He didn't need to look up to recognize his foster father's voice. "Who are you?" he growled. "I'm Inko Midoriya. A pleasure to meet you. I'm here to collect Shinso's things." That brainwashed brat? "No, Hitoshi Shinso, a lovely little boy who I am adopting. May we come in to collect his things?" The man grunted, moving aside. "I don't know how much you're gonna find left. Knock yourself out, lady." Hitoshi stuck as close to Mrs. Ink as he could. He guided her to his room, avoiding the looks from his former foster siblings. The room looked just the same as he had left it. Mrs. Ink went to the dresser, but Hitoshi knew she wouldn't find much. He never had a lot to begin with, even if they hadn't already thrown out his clothes. He made a beeline for his pillow. It didn't look like it had been moved, thankfully, but he wouldn't know until he checked. Hitoshi let out the breath he'd been holding when he pulled out the two pictures. They were untouched by anything other than time. It was the happiest he had been all day. "Are those your parents?" Mrs. Ink asked quietly. "Mama and Papa and Eraserhead." "Do you want to put them in the bag, or do you want to carry them?" "Backpack, let me get." He retrieved the backpack without any problems either. His foster brother, the oldest one, poked his head in, probably to try to say something mean to Hitoshi, but Mrs. Ink made him leave. They got the backpack from under the closet floor, which Hitoshi thinks surprised Mrs. Ink. They were done before long. Hitoshi had his backpack, what few clothes were left, and his pictures. He was happy. Mrs. Ink didn't look happy, but hardly anyone was when they came into this house. Today Hitoshi was the exception. It was nerve-wracking, but he did it. The door closed to his old house with a note of finality. He wasn't going back there, no matter what anyone said, especially if Mrs. Ink was on his side. Hitoshi was decently sure that she was the reason no one in the house had tried to talk to them either. Her glares were scary. They returned home happily. Hitoshi carefully took the bag and raced to Izuku in his room. He wanted to show Zu what his parents had looked like. It would be the first time he trusted someone enough to show them his precious things. The pictures were put in frames and set on the dresser. Hitoshi knew they were safe there. He liked being able to see them without worrying about them being destroyed. For the first time since his parents had died, Hitoshi felt like he had a real family. There was not a dry eye in the courtroom the day Hitoshi Shinso was officially adopted. It had been hard. The foster system had put up a fight, but Inko and Midoriya prevailed. She held her head high, tears dripping down her cheeks when her new son was announced to finally be theirs. They had won. In the future, her nickname became Mother Lawyer. Anyone who didn't know why was directed to the many, many pictures of her family, hardly any of which looked like her, that sat proudly on her desk. Hisashi Midoriya had started sobbing and gathered his little family, now legally bigger by one, and wrapped them all in a hug. He was trying really hard not to accidentally cough out soot. Getting kicked out of the courthouse would not look good. He had a feeling they might be back, but he had no idea what for. A weird feeling he dismissed as excitement at finally adopting Shinso. They would, in fact, be back soon. Izuki Midoriya squealed and laughed and cried when his best friend officially became his brother. His mouth moved a mile a minute, half of it nonsense. He squeezed his new brother with all the strength a 5-year-old could muster. He had a brother now. It was one of the best things to ever happen to him. Izuka briefly wondered if he would ever have any more siblings. He most definitely would. When the gavel hit the sand, Hitoshi Shinso almost immediately started crying. A sign he was meant for this family, maybe. The thought made him smile even more than he already was. Tears streaming from his eyes, but he was smiling just as bright as Zu. He was so happy. He had a family, a real-life family. It was almost too much to believe. But it was real. It was real, and now he had 2 parents and a brother. He kept his last name, since it was one of the last things left from his late parents. He was wrapped in a massive hug hardly 5 seconds after the judge spoke. Hitoshi smiled and melted into his new family. Bonus. Shinso, what's in your bag? Hitoshi looked up from the floor to see his teacher, Miss Toko, standing near him. It was recess time, and he really wanted to go see Zu, especially considering this was their first school day together as official brothers. In my bag? He asked, scrunching up his eyebrows. Then he remembered just what Mrs. Ink let him bring to school today. Hitoshi smiled brightly, staring up at his mildly shocked teacher. Marshmallows. Marshmallows. Yeah, my new mama let me bring them. Zu wanted to share, so I'ma go see him. Bye-bye, Miss Toko. His teacher watched him race out the door, wondering what in the world had just happened. This was No One Left Behind, Chapter 6, written by Cosmic Ace. If you liked this, go let Cosmic Ace know on the original story, and let me know in the comments. If you have any suggestions for other podfics I could read, let me know and I'll see what I could do. Thanks for listening.